Well, good morning, everyone, and greetings, and thank you so much for being here. I would say at the outset that his entire teaching is about being a light to oneself. So we have a theme, being a light to oneself, true meditation. And so it's a narrative that is created around that theme, going through his talks, mostly collected in the books that people have put together of his talks, and selecting, uh, uh, from my point of view, the most salient things, remembering that the word is not the thing. So these are words. So the point here is, how does this apply to me in my life, in my daily activity, in my daily interactions with people, with my family, with my kids, my grandkids, with the world? How does it help me respond to the crisis we are all facing? So, to give you a sense of today, tomorrow, and Sunday, today we cover what does it mean to be a light to oneself and what is true meditation, at least the way Krishnamurti presents it. Saturday, can we create a totally different society? And if we're going to do that, understanding the dynamics of fear and authority in ourselves and in the world is really critical. Sunday, this light in oneself and the illumination of love. Krishnamurti said, this light, this law, is neither yours nor that of another. There is only light. This is love. Our theme is this light in oneself, true meditation. So I thought we would begin with the mystery of light itself in the natural world. Without light, it would be a pretty dark world. So this light at dawn on the mountain, we take all of this for granted. So I just thought it might be useful for 3 or 4 seconds here to remember that the light in the natural world is extraordinary, mysterious, beautiful, and it takes many, many forms. Now, if we go into a cave, we need a light to be able to see what's in there. And in a way, our own mind is like a cave. And the light of self-awareness is what shows us what's in there. If you take a walk through the woods, nearly any time of day, you will see extraordinary light if you're giving your attention to it. And of course, at the sea, the sunset, as the light, the sun sinks below the horizon and seems to be swallowed up by the sea, human beings have for centuries been enthralled by sunrises and sunset. Quiets the mind, but there's something about the reflection of light in the natural world that may be reflecting something within ourselves. So I'm going to begin with this. He said it would be immensely worthwhile to see for each one of us if we could be a light to ourselves. When you are a light to yourself, you are a light to the world. It's a pretty powerful statement, and we'll explore more today about that. The very investigation to find out what it means to be a light to oneself is part of meditation. So here we go. What is this light in oneself? What is true meditation, and are they separate from each other? He says this light to yourself can only come when you investigate into yourself what you are. That is self-awareness, to know what you are, not according to psychologists, not according to philosophers, not according to the speaker, but to know, to be aware of your own nature, your own structure, of your own thinking, feeling, finding out the whole structure of it. Every day we see or read of appalling things happening in the world as the result of violence in man. You may say, I can't do anything about it, or how can I influence the world? I think you can tremendously influence the world if in yourself you are not violent, if you lead actually every day a peaceful life, a life which is not competitive, ambitious, envious, a life which does not create enmity. Small fires can become a blaze. So we're part of the solution and we're part of the problem. But apparently small fires can become a blaze. Now, I thought I would bring this in from a public talk. He's having an exchange with someone. Kay, why hasn't man changed? Why hasn't he learnt? Questioner, that's right, the eternal question. Krishnamurti, yes, sir. Why has man remained inwardly primitive? Is it because culturally, socially, we have looked for the outer to change the inner? Change the structure, the outward structure of society, pass new laws, control thought, and so on, and you will then change the inner man. It hasn't worked out. Krishnamurti. Shouldn't we begin with ourselves, with what we are, and there radically, fundamentally change? Unless we do that, we will go on for the next 50,000 years. People laugh. The questioner says, well, you and I won't. Okay, you and I won't. But the common current of consciousness will go on. But if you and another change radically, you affect that consciousness. Krishnamurti, we must find people, small groups of people, whether in America, Europe, India, and so on, who are concerned completely with this inner psychological fundamental change. And I think it is possible. Therefore, we are working on it. Questioner, or you wouldn't be sitting here. Quite right. We're working on it together. We're connecting on this together. So, Krishnamurti on meditation, understanding ourselves, the conditioned mind, and being a light to oneself. Generally, meditation is from here to there. with practice and all the rest of it, to move from this to that. To me personally, meditation is something that cannot be cultivated or practiced. It must come naturally, like a flower that blooms. You can't force it. The very process of learning a technique in order to meditate is a denial of meditation. Meditation is something entirely different. It is not the outcome of any practice, of any discipline, of any compulsion or conformity. But if you begin to understand the process of conformity, of compulsion, the desire to achieve, to gain something, then the understanding of all that is part of meditation. Meditation is the process of understanding oneself. That's the beginning of it. Meditation is actually seeing what is. So meditation is the process of understanding oneself. He said, without understanding yourself, not only superficially, but at the very depths of your being, you have no basis for any action. You have no foundation whatsoever on which you can build a house that is stable, orderly. So it is absolutely necessary, if you would really take this extraordinary journey into this enormous, complex problem of understanding oneself. You have to walk out of the darkness, out of your own chaos, out of the forest of your own ignorance in order to have an original perception of what is true. We live in fragments. You are one thing at the office, another at home. You talk about democracy, and in your heart you are an autocrat. You talk about loving your neighbor, yet kill him with competition. There is one part of you working independently of the other. Are you aware of this fragmentary existence in yourself? And is it possible for a brain that has broken up its own functioning, its own thinking into fragments, is it possible for such a brain to be aware of the whole field? Is it possible to look at the whole consciousness completely, totally, which means to be a total human being? The beginning of meditation is self-knowledge, being aware of every movement of thought and feeling, knowing the layers of my consciousness, not only the superficial layers, but the hidden, the deeply concealed activities. By being aware of them, by seeing its own ruthlessness, how it talks to the servant, to the wife, to the daughter, to the mother, and so on. Meditation is a process of emptying the mind of all activity of the self, of all the activity of the me. Where there is the activity of the self, meditation is not possible. This is very important to understand, not verbally, but actually. One of the activities of the self is to separate itself as the me, as the observer. The observer is the past. all the accumulated knowledge, experience, memories. So the I, the me, separates itself as the observer from the you, the observed. We and they, you and me. I observe you and you observe me. I look at you and you look at me. Can you look at me without the word me, without your prejudice, your like and dislike? Can you look at me and can I look at you without this interpreting process? The interpreting, the translating into words, my opinions, my observation, my criticisms, my prejudice. Please see the absolute essential necessity of this, that nobody can teach you about yourself except yourself. So you have to be the guru, the disciple yourself, the teacher yourself, and learn from yourself. Find out for yourself what you are, and to learn how to observe yourself. If you are really interested in this, you have to find out for yourself your own activity of the self, the habits, the verbal statements, the gestures, the deceptions, the guilt that you cultivate and hold on to as though it were some precious thing instead of throwing it away, the punishments, all the activities of the self. And that demands awareness. This is the fundamental awareness. Such awareness is like living with a snake in the room. You watch it every moment, every movement. You are very, very sensitive to the slightest sound it makes. Such a state of attention is total energy. In such awareness, the totality of yourself is revealed in an instant. Meditation is a movement in attention, awareness. In understanding its own self-centered activities, the mind comes upon this state of awareness which is choiceless. And such a mind is then capable of complete silence, stillness. The ending of the me is part of meditation. That is the only meditation. And so the ending of me, of course, requires some understanding of my conditioned mind and the capacity to observe it without criticizing it. He said, for centuries, we have been conditioned by nationality, caste, class, tradition, religion, language, education, literature, art, custom, convention, propaganda of all kinds, economic pressure, the food we eat, the climate we live in, our family, our friends, our experiences. Every influence you can think of And therefore, our responses to every problem are conditioned. Without freedom from conditioning, humanity will always remain a prisoner and life will remain a battlefield. I am born with a label, and this or some other label of my own choosing sticks to me for the rest of my life. I am born and die in one religion, or I change from one religion to another, and I think I have understood reality, God. But I have only perpetuated the conditioned mind, the label. So can you and I be aware of our conditioning? Is it possible to be free of it? Seeing the whole implication of the effects of conditioning, endless war, racism, sexism, poverty, polluting the earth. Those are my words in parentheses, by the way. How is my mind to free itself from conditioning? Is the entity that desires to free the mind from conditioning different from the mind itself? Am I, who wishes to free myself from conditioning, different from the conditioning? Or are they both the same? If they are the same, which they are, then how is it possible for the mind to free itself from conditioning? Most of us think that an analytical process will ultimately bring about the freedom of the mind because we are so used to thinking in terms of making an effort. We say, I must break down this conditioning. I must produce a result. I must do something. But the I who is acting is itself conditioned. The I is the conditioned mind, and therefore it cannot break down that conditioning. When the whole of me realizes that I cannot break down conditioning, that whatever I do about it, discipline, worship, prayer, anything through which the me makes an effort to break down any part of itself, is still limited, then does not the action of the me come to an end? And the very ending of this effort is the cessation of conditioning. That is meditation, which is not through any action of will. Please experiment with this. The mind cannot do a thing about its conditioning. When the mind realizes that, is there not an instantaneous cessation without any compulsion of this I which is seeking, searching, hoping, gaining? That is meditation. When the superficial conscious mind is thus fully aware of its activities, through that understanding it becomes spontaneously quiet, not drugged by compulsion or regimented by desire. Then it is in a position to receive the intimations, the hints of the unconscious, of the many, many hidden layers of the mind, the racial instincts, the buried memories, the concealed pursuits, the deep wounds that are still unhealed. When all these have projected themselves and are understood, when the whole consciousness is unburdened, unfettered by any wound, by any memory, it is in a position to receive the eternal. If you begin to understand what you are without trying to change it, then what you are undergoes a transformation. As you know, Krishnamurti loved being in the natural world, and he wrote some very poetic observations about it. This is one of them. As you watched the light on the river, meditation was going on. The very light was part of that meditation. You looked not with a mind that was translating it into some meaning, but with eyes that saw the light and nothing else. At the moment of light, thought withers away. In meditation, the dividing line between you and me disappears. In it, the light of silence destroys the knowledge of me. Meditation can take place when you are sitting in a bus or walking in the woods full of light and shadows, listening to the singing of birds, or looking at the face of your wife or child. So can everyday life be a meditation? Can I slow down? Can I make the journey to a grocery store, to a gas station, part of my meditation? Can I feed my dog or cat in meditation? Make a cup of tea. Meditation is the transformation of the mind, a psychological revolution, so that we live a daily life, not in theory, not as an ideal, but in every movement of that life in which there is compassion, love, and the energy to transcend all the pettiness, the narrowness, the shallowness. Meditation is not a separate thing from life. It is the very essence of life.